consistency is not glamorous. It does not ask you to be extraordinary for a single moment, but it does demand that you show up in the smallest of ways, over and over again. This book begins with a simple truth. Every limit you think you have is not a wall, but a pattern. Patterns of doubt, patterns of fear, patterns of hesitation, and patterns can be broken by creating new ones. Chapter 1. Consistency is not glamorous. It does not shine with fireworks or explode with applause. It does not carry the charm of sudden victories or overnight transformations, but it carries something far more powerful, something enduring, something that quietly dismantles every wall you thought was unbreakable. And in this very beginning of your journey, you must understand that consistency is the key that unlocks every hidden door within you. The force that patiently erodes every limit, the steady heartbeat that keeps pushing forward long after motivation has gone silent. Because what most people fail to realize is that life is not built in moments of brilliance, but in patterns, and these patterns are woven into your days, your habits, your repeated choices, the things you do when nobody is watching, and every limit you believe you have. Whether it is fear, insecurity, weakness, procrastination, or doubt, is not an immovable wall but simply a pattern, a chain of repeated responses. And if patterns can be created, they can also be broken, replaced, rewritten, and rebuilt. And the way you do that is not by waiting for extraordinary days, but by embracing the ordinary ones with extraordinary commitment. For most people, sit and wait for a lightning strike, for inspiration to flood them, for motivation to push them into action. But consistency does not roar like thunder. It does not wait for storms. It moves with the quiet certainty of time, tick by tick, step by step, and like the slow but unstoppable movement of a river carving valleys and shaping mountains. Consistency reshapes your reality in ways that no burst of passion ever could. Because passion may ignite you, but consistency sustains you. And as you listen to these words, I want you to recognize that your limits are not chains of iron. They are threads of habit, fragile but deceiving, strong only because you have believed in them for too long. And every day that you show up, every act of discipline you repeat, every small step you refuse to abandon, you pull at those threads until eventually they unravel completely, and you are free. And freedom, real freedom, does not arrive from waiting for the perfect moment, but from showing up in imperfect ones, again and again. Because perfection is brittle and fleeting, while consistency is durable and enduring. And perfection demands you succeed once, while consistency demands only that you return after you fail. And when you learn to return, even when the weight of yesterday is heavy, even when your body aches, even when your mind is tired, you will discover that the road itself begins to carry you. That momentum is born from persistence. And this truth has been whispered in every story of greatness across history. For talent may open doors, luck may place you in the room, opportunity may give you a chance, but only consistency determines whether you stay, whether you grow, whether you become something greater than the moment. Because success is never sudden. It is the accumulation of invisible steps taken when no one was clapping, no one was cheering, no one was watching. And every champion, every master, every leader you have ever admired has been shaped not by grand moments, but by daily returns, by the refusal to quit, by showing up in silence until the world could no longer ignore the results. And I want you to understand that consistency is not glamorous, because its rewards are not immediate. But that is what makes it so powerful, because in a world addicted to quick victories, the one who learns to endure, to repeat, to persist, becomes unstoppable. And you must accept that the path will not always be exciting. It will often feel repetitive, sometimes even dull, but within that repetition lies the seed of transformation, because repetition is not punishment, it is progress. And every time you repeat, you are not starting over. You are building higher, you are carving deeper, you are growing stronger. And in time you will realize that every act of consistency was never small, It was never insignificant, because each act was a brick laid in the foundation of the person you are becoming. And when the storms come, when challenges rise, when doubt knocks at your door, it will not be talent that sustains you, not luck, not inspiration, but the foundation built from consistency, because consistency is resilience, it is discipline, it is identity, and this book, this journey of 15 chapters, is not about teaching you shortcuts or illusions of overnight success. It is not a collection of tricks or quick fixes. It is a guide to awakening the force within you that never quits, to remind you that what you need is not intensity for a moment, but persistence for a lifetime, because consistency does not make your path easy, but it makes your growth inevitable, and if you will commit to it, if you will allow it to take root in your life, it will quietly, patiently, relentlessly break every limit you have, not all at once, not in a sudden explosion, but in the steady rhythm of someone who refuses to stop walking, someone who refuses to give up, someone who understands that greatness is not found in what you occasionally do, but in what you consistently repeat. And now, at the opening of this journey, let us begin together by declaring this truth: consistency will break every limit you thought was permanent, and the only question left is whether you are willing to return to it, day after day, until the limits that once bound you dissolve completely. Chapter 2. Consistency begins with choice, and though that may sound simple, it is the most powerful truth you can embrace, because every single day you are faced with countless crossroads, and at each one, you are given the chance to either step forward with discipline or retreat into comfort. And it is these small, quiet decisions, invisible to the outside world, that shape the trajectory of your life, far more than the grand, dramatic decisions you imagine will define you, because destiny is not carved in monumental choices, but in repeated ones, in the moments when no one is paying attention, when no spotlight is shining, when you could so easily give yourself permission to stay the same. Yet instead you decide to take the harder path, and this is where consistency lies, in the fabric of ordinary choices made over and over again, until they become a pattern that rewrites who you are. And the truth is, many people wait for circumstances to make the choice easier. They wait for the day when time is abundant, when energy is high, when motivation is burning. But the real test of consistency is whether you choose discipline when those conditions are absent, whether you step into growth when it is inconvenient, whether you honor your commitment when it would be simpler to betray it, because in those moments the weight of your character is revealed. And make no mistake, the world does not reward what you intend to do, it rewards what you consistently choose to do, and choice is always within your reach, even when everything else feels beyond your control, and you may think your circumstances dictate your destiny, but in reality, your repeated choices carve your destiny out of the stone of circumstance, just as water carves canyons not by force, but by persistence, drop after drop, choice after choice. And this is why your future is not waiting to be handed to you, it is waiting to be chosen. And if you want to live beyond your limits, you must begin by recognizing the power in the smallest decisions. The decision to rise when you could sleep longer, to focus when you could drift, to speak truth when you could stay silent, to practice when you could procrastinate, to honor the promise you made to yourself when no one else would know if you broke it, because consistency is not about once-in-a-lifetime heroism. It is about daily fidelity to the person you say you want to become, and every time you choose discipline over comfort, you are casting a vote for that future self. You are laying down a stone in the foundation of your strength, and though one stone looks small, over time it becomes unshakable, and though one choice looks insignificant, over time it becomes your identity. And understand this deeply. Our identity is not formed in a single declaration. It is shaped by the choices you repeat until they become who you are, and that is why consistency is inseparable from choice. because each choice you make in alignment with your goals reinforces your belief that you are capable of reaching them, and each choice against them reinforces the lie that you are weak. And soon your choices either build the walls that hold you captive or build the bridge that sets you free. And it is not the dramatic moments of decision that will free you, but the hidden ones, the ones where the world is silent and you are left with only your will, your excuses, and your decision. And I want you to feel the weight of this, because the life you dream of is not waiting in a distant, magical future. It is waiting at the end of the choices you are making today, tomorrow, and every day after. And if you want to transform, if you want to break every limit, you must learn to honor the process of daily choice, not just when it feels good, but especially when it feels difficult, because that is when consistency forges strength, and strength is not given. It is built, and it is built by choosing discipline even when no one applauds you for it, because applause does not make you strong, choices do. And perhaps right now you have convinced yourself that you are a victim of circumstance, that life has tied your hands. But the truth is that the power of choice has never been taken from you, only surrendered by you. And if you would reclaim it, if you would exercise it relentlessly, even in the smallest of matters, you would discover that consistency is nothing more than the accumulation of courageous choices, and those choices, stacked one upon another, become unstoppable momentum, and momentum is what breaks limits, what carries you forward when your strength is low, what makes the difficult easier and the impossible inevitable. But it all begins not with grand speeches or grand plans, but with one decision, today, here, now. And the question is simple: will you choose comfort, or will you choose consistency? Will you allow the pattern of excuses to continue, or will you begin a new pattern of persistence? Because your life is waiting for the answer, and only you can give it, not once but every day, until those choices have remade you completely. Chapter 3: The mind resists change, not because change is impossible, but because the mind is wired for survival, and survival seeks the familiar, and so it clings to routines, habits, and patterns, even when those patterns quietly destroy you. And this is why stepping into consistency feels so difficult at first, because you are not just fighting laziness or weakness, you are fighting a brain that believes comfort equals safety. And so when you decide to build a new habit, when you decide to commit to a path of persistence, your mind rises against you. It whispers excuses, it magnifies fears, it tells you that you will fail, it tells you to stop. But here is the truth: the voice of resistance is not the voice of reality. It is simply the voice of a system trying to protect itself, even when that protection is harmful, and every act of consistency is an act of rebellion against that old system. Every time you show up despite resistance, you are reprogramming your brain, you are teaching it a new language, and though at first it protests loudly, with time its voice grows weaker, because consistency is not just a habit, it is a rewiring of your entire belief system, a restructuring of your identity, and what once felt unbearable becomes tolerable, and what was tolerable becomes natural, and what becomes natural eventually becomes effortless. And this is how transformation happens, not in one sweeping moment of revelation, but in the daily persistence of acting in opposition to the mind's excuses, until those excuses no longer hold power. And you must understand that the resistance you feel is not proof you are on the wrong path. It is proof you are breaking patterns. It is proof you are changing, and change will always feel uncomfortable before it feels liberating. And this is why so many people quit too early. They mistake resistance for a warning, when in reality resistance is evidence of progress. It is the friction created when old habits collide with new determination. And if you can learn to endure that friction long enough, it will burn away the old self and refine the new. But endurance here does not mean gritting your teeth once. It means returning again and again, even when the mind rebels, even when the temptation to surrender is loud, because every return teaches your brain that persistence is stronger than fear, and as days become weeks and weeks become months, something remarkable happens. The balance shifts, and instead of fighting yourself to stay consistent, you begin to fight yourself if you break the pattern, because the new identity has taken root, and what once required conscious effort becomes instinct, like breathing, like walking, like any skill learned through repetition. And this is where power is born, when consistency is no longer something you force, but something you have become. And when you reach this stage, limits you once thought were unshakable reveal themselves to be illusions, because the only thing that made them strong was your belief in them. And belief is shaped by repetition, by what you feed your mind daily, by what you choose to act on. And when you repeatedly act in defiance of fear, fear loses its credibility. When you repeatedly act in defiance of weakness, weakness loses its grip, and suddenly the impossible becomes possible, not because it changed, but because you did. And here lies the greatest gift of consistency. It not only transforms your results, it transforms your relationship with yourself, because every act of persistence builds trust, and trust in yourself is the foundation of confidence. And without confidence, no achievement will satisfy you, because deep down you will still doubt your ability to repeat it. But with consistency, you no longer need to hope you can. You know you can, because you have proven it to yourself day after day. And this is why consistency is not only about external growth, but about internal liberation. It frees you from the tyranny of doubt, from the slavery of fear, from the endless cycle of starting and quitting. And though in the beginning it feels like war, with time it becomes peace, because your mind, once resistant, learns that persistence is safety, that growth is survival, that discipline is freedom. And when that shift occurs, you will look back and wonder why you ever believed you were trapped by your limits, because you will see clearly that your limits were nothing more than outdated instructions your mind was following. And you will realize that the very act of showing up again and again was the tool that rewrote those instructions. And you will carry this truth with you. Consistency is the only way to convince your own mind that you are stronger than the excuses it invents. And once your mind is convinced, nothing external can hold you back. No challenge too great, no obstacle too heavy, no setback too final, because consistency has reprogrammed not just your habits, but your entire sense of self. And this new self is limitless, not because it is free from resistance, but because it no longer fears resistance. It knows that resistance is simply the doorway to growth, and so it welcomes the discomfort. It embraces the challenge. It leans into the struggle, knowing that each is a strike against the old patterns, another step toward a freer, stronger, truer identity. And so the lesson of this chapter is simple but eternal. Your mind will resist change, but consistency will teach it to obey. And once your mind obeys, every limit collapses, and your life becomes proof that persistence is stronger than fear, stronger than weakness, stronger than every excuse you once believed was real. Chapter 4. Do not confuse consistency with speed, for growth is not a race, and those who try to rush the process often burn out long before they see the fruit of their labor, while those who learn patience with persistence discover that the greatest transformations happen not in sprints, but in marathons, not in sudden leaps, but in steady steps. And when you look at nature, you see this truth written everywhere, because a tree does not rush to stretch its branches to the sky. It grows patiently, layer by layer, season by season, adding rings of strength with each passing year. And in the same way, your growth is not meant to be immediate but progressive, deliberate, gradual, and enduring, because what grows too quickly often lacks roots, and what lacks roots cannot endure the storms. But what grows steadily becomes unshakable, and this is the beauty of consistency. It allows time to work in your favor. It compounds your effort silently, invisibly, until one day the results reveal themselves so powerfully that the world calls them sudden. Though you know the truth, that nothing about it was sudden at all, it was built in silence, in patience, in persistence, in showing up on days when nothing seemed to change. Because success does not announce itself in advance. It grows in the shadows, in the hidden places where no applause exists. And you must understand that impatience is one of the greatest enemies of consistency, for impatience makes you abandon the process too soon. It convinces you that if results are not immediate, then the effort must be worthless. But this is a lie, because the effort you invest today does not always reveal its value tomorrow. Sometimes it waits weeks, months, even years before it blossoms, and the question is not whether the seed will grow quickly. The question is whether you will water it long enough for it to grow at all. Because no matter how much you want fruit on the first day, you must first nurture the roots, and roots are invisible. They grow in darkness. They anchor you quietly. They prepare you for storms you do not yet see. And this is what consistency is doing every time you act without immediate reward. It is building roots beneath the surface, preparing strength you cannot measure yet. And if you quit too soon, you uproot yourself before the fruit could ever appear. And so I tell you, honor the pace of progress, for it is not the speed of your steps that matters, but the fact that you keep stepping. And though others may mock your pace, though they may appear to surge ahead, understand that consistency will carry you further than bursts of intensity ever could, because intensity may create noise, but consistency creates momentum, and momentum once established is nearly impossible to stop, while intensity fades quickly, leaving those who relied on it exhausted and empty. And so you must resist the temptation to measure yourself against others, because comparison breeds impatience, and impatience breeds inconsistency, and inconsistency kills progress. But when you commit to your own path, your own rhythm, your own steady pace, you free yourself from the illusion that faster is always better, because better is not faster, better is consistent. And what is consistent inevitably becomes great. And this is why the masters of every craft are not those who rushed, but those who endured, those who repeated their practice through years of obscurity, those who stayed faithful when no one noticed, those who grew slowly and therefore grew deeply. And when the day of recognition came, people called it overnight success, though in reality it was years of invisible labor, years of patience married to persistence. And if you want to break your limits, you must be willing to accept that real growth demands time, that excellence cannot be microwaved, that greatness cannot be rushed. And if you can embrace this truth, if you can surrender your obsession with speed, you will find peace in the process, because you will no longer need results tomorrow to justify effort today. You will trust that effort itself is never wasted, that every act of consistency is planting seeds, watering roots, preparing fruit. And even when nothing seems to be happening, everything is happening. And one day you will wake to see how far you have come, and it will feel sudden, but only to those who never saw you work, because you will know that it was never sudden. It was the inevitable outcome of patience, persistence, and consistency combined. And this is why speed is not your ally. Patience is, persistence is, discipline is. And if you will embrace them, you will discover that slow or low progress, it is the most powerful progress of all, because it lasts, it endures, it survives the storms, and when the winds blow and the rains fall, you will stand unshaken, because your roots were grown in time, and they were grown by consistency. Chapter 5. Excuses are the enemy of consistency, and though they often sound reasonable, even convincing, they are nothing more than polished lies we tell ourselves to justify inaction. And every time you believe them, you surrender a piece of your potential, because excuses disguise themselves as protection. They whisper that you are too tired, that you lack the time, that the conditions are not right, that tomorrow will be better. And at first they feel comforting, but comfort is a thief. It robs you silently, and you only notice the loss when months or years have slipped away, and you are still in the same place, still bound by the same limits, still wondering why nothing has changed. And the answer is not that you lacked talent or opportunity, but that you gave your excuses more power than your persistence, because excuses do not vanish on their own. They grow stronger each time you accept them. They tighten around you like chains until you mistake them for reality. But they are not reality, they are illusions, and consistency is the weapon that shatters them. Because consistency is action taken despite excuse, progress made despite imperfection, forward motion even when nothing feels ideal. And you must understand this deeply. Conditions will never be perfect. Your schedule will never be completely free. Your energy will never be eternally high. Your motivation will never be unbroken. And if you wait for perfection, you will wait forever. And that waiting will become your life. But consistency demands that you stop waiting and start moving. It tells you that imperfect action today is infinitely more valuable than perfect action postponed. And this is why excuses are so dangerous, because they seduce you into believing that delay is harmless. But delay is decay. It erodes your momentum. It corrodes your belief in yourself. And every day you surrender to an excuse, you are teaching your mind that excuses have authority. But when you act despite them, you weaken them. You expose them for what they truly are: hollow words, empty justifications, nothing more. And slowly they lose their grip, because the truth is slice as long as you feed them. And when you starve them with consistent action, they die, and in their place rises discipline. And discipline is freedom, because discipline frees you from the endless cycle of starting and quitting, from the endless shame of broken promises, from the endless burden of knowing you could, but telling yourself you can't. And the irony is that excuses pretend to protect you from pain, from effort, from discomfort. But what they actually protect you from is growth, from strength, from transformation, from the life you were meant to live. And once you see this clearly, once you recognize that every excuse is a prison guard disguised as a friend, you will stop negotiating with them. You will stop entertaining them. You will rise above them. Because consistency is not about feeling ready. It is about doing what you said you would do regardless of how you feel. And that is the true mark of strength. Not that you acted when it was easy, but that you acted when it was hard, when it was inconvenient, when every excuse told you to wait. And I want you to understand that breaking excuses is not a single battle, it is a daily war. Because excuses are cunning. They will return in new disguises. They will tell you that resting one day won't hurt, that skipping one practice won't matter, that pausing for just a little while is harmless. But every small surrender compounds. Every missed step weakens your momentum. And the opposite is true as well. Every small victory strengthens your persistence. Every act of resistance against excuses builds your resilience, and soon the balance tips, and you discover that choosing action becomes easier than choosing excuse, because you have built the muscle of discipline. And that muscle, once strong, carries you forward. And when others fall back into the trap of waiting for motivation, you will move, because you have trained yourself not to wait, but to do. And this is the difference between those who dream and those who achieve. The dreamer waits for conditions, the achiever creates conditions, and creation is always messy, imperfect, difficult. But it is real, and real effort always produces real change, while excuses produce nothing but regret. And regret is the heaviest weight you can carry, heavier than tired muscles, heavier than long hours, heavier than temporary discomfort, because regret stretches across years, across decades. It lingers in the back of your mind, whispering that you could have been more, could have done more, could have lived beyond your limits, but you chose to believe your excuses instead, and I do not want that for you. I want you to recognize today that excuses are the greatest barrier between you and the life you desire, and consistency is the only way to break them, not once, not occasionally, but daily. And if you commit to this, if you commit to acting even when excuses scream the loudest, you will find that they lose their power, and you will rise into a version of yourself that no longer negotiates with weakness, no longer bargains with fear, no longer bows to the illusion of perfect conditions. And in that rise you will discover that excuses never had power over you at all, only the power you gave them, and now you are taking that power back. Chapter 6: Failure is not the opposite of consistency, it is the very fuel that gives consistency its power. And if you fear failure, you will never allow yourself to grow, because every meaningful pursuit will test you, will stretch you, will demand from you more than you thought you had, and in that process you will stumble, you will miss steps, you will fall short of your own expectations. And if you confuse these moments with defeat, you will quit. But if you learn to see them as part of the path, you will rise stronger each time. And this is the secret that so few truly understand. Consistency does not require you to be flawless. It requires you to be faithful. It requires you to return after every fall, to rise after every stumble, to continue after every setback. Because the act of returning is what transforms failure from an ending into a lesson, from a weight into a stepping stone, from a wound into wisdom. And this is why those who achieve greatness are not those who avoided failure, but those who embraced it, studied it, learned from it, and refused to let it have the final word. Because failure will try to whisper that you are not enough, that you should give up, that you will never make it. But when you rise anyway, when you show up again, when you take another step forward, you silence that voice, you prove it wrong, and over time you come to realize that failure is not your enemy, it is your teacher, and teachers do not break you, they shape you. And though their lessons may sting, they are the very lessons that carve resilience into your character. And you must understand that resilience is not built in comfort, it is forged in trial, in pressure, in disappointment. And each time you practice consistency through failure, you are training your spirit to endure. And endurance is the true mark of strength, because anyone can be consistent when progress is smooth. But the ones who stand out, the ones who break their limits, are those who remain consistent when progress is painful, when results are invisible, when failure feels overwhelming. And I want you to grasp this clearly: failure will visit you, you cannot escape it. But what matters is not its arrival, but your response. And if your response is retreat, then failure wins. But if your response is persistence, then failure becomes fuel. It becomes evidence that you are attempting something worth doing. Because the only people who never fail are the ones who never try. And a life without failure is not a life of safety. It is a life of stagnation, and stagnation is its own kind of death, slow, quiet, unnoticed, but devastating. And you must decide which pain you will embrace, the pain of failure or the pain of regret, because one strengthens you and the other weakens you, one expands you and the other shrinks you, one teaches you and the other torments you, and the difference between the two is consistency. Because consistency ensures that failure is never final. It ensures that every misstep is temporary, that every setback is a setup for a comeback. And this is why you must not fear falling. You must fear quitting, because quitting locks the failure in place, but persistence transforms it. And if you study the lives of those who have achieved anything lasting, you will see this pattern repeated again and again. They failed more times than others even attempted. They stumbled, they broke, they were rejected, they were doubted, they were laughed at, but they kept going, and in the end, it was not their talent or their luck that defined them. It was their refusal to let failure stop them. It was their relentless consistency. And this is the invitation before you, not to avoid failure but to walk through it, not to despise it but to learn from it, not to see it as an enemy, but as a companion on the road to mastery, because every failure carries a lesson, and those who are consistent gather those lessons until they form wisdom. And wisdom is what sharpens your actions, strengthens your decisions, and refines your path. And so when you stumble next, when you face a setback, do not waste your energy on shame, waste no breath on self-condemnation. Simply ask yourself, what does this teach me? And how quickly can I return? Because that is the question consistency demands, and that is the question that will carry you forward. And when you live by this, failure loses its power to break you, because you realize it never could. It could only delay you, and delays are nothing to the one who refuses to stop. And so let this truth take root in you. Failure is not the end. It is the evidence that you are trying, the proof that you are reaching, the sign that you are alive. And if you will stay consistent through it, then every failure becomes another step toward victory. And one day you will look back and see that the very things you once feared were the very things that made you unshakable. Chapter 7: Discipline is the heartbeat of consistency, the silent force that drives you forward when motivation fades, the engine that powers your actions when your feelings beg you to stop. And without discipline, your journey will always stall, because feelings are fragile. They shift like the wind. One day you feel unstoppable, and the next you feel defeated before you even begin. But discipline does not care about feelings. Discipline is a choice made in the quiet moments, a promise kept when no one is watching, a decision to honor your commitments regardless of mood, weather, or circumstance. And this is why those who rely on motivation never last. They move in bursts, burning bright and then fading quickly. But those who rely on discipline endure. They become steady, consistent, unshakable, because discipline builds habits, and habits build results, and results build transformation. And if you want to break every limit you have, you must anchor yourself not to the unstable waves of emotion, but to the unmovable rock of discipline. Because discipline is not punishment, it is freedom. Freedom from the chaos of inconsistency, freedom from the endless cycle of starting and quitting, freedom from the heavy regret that comes from knowing you could, but didn't. And too many people mistake discipline as a restriction, as if it steals their joy. But the truth is the opposite. Discipline multiplies joy because it creates progress, and progress creates pride, confidence, and purpose. And those feelings last far longer than the fleeting pleasure of giving in to laziness, distraction, or temptation. And understand this clearly. Every time you choose discipline, you are casting a vote for the person you want to become. You are reinforcing an identity of strength, reliability, and persistence. And over time, those votes accumulate until they form a character that cannot be shaken. And though it may feel difficult in the moment, the price of discipline is always cheaper than the cost of regret, because regret lingers, regret poisons, regret whispers in your ear late at night, reminding you of every chance you wasted, while discipline gives you peace. The peace of knowing you honored your word, the peace of knowing you showed up even when it was hard, the peace of knowing you are building something solid and lasting. And let us be honest, there will be days when you will not want to continue, when excuses will scream louder than reason, when the path will feel unbearable. But discipline is the voice inside that says, do it anyway, take the step anyway, follow through anyway. And that voice becomes louder each time you listen to it, because discipline, like a muscle, grows stronger with use. And at first it feels heavy, but over time you find yourself moving with power you didn't know you had, and that power spills into every area of your life. Because once you master the discipline to be consistent in one pursuit, you discover that you can apply the same principle everywhere, in your health, in your work, in your relationships, in your dreams, and suddenly you are no longer at the mercy of mood swings or fleeting motivation. You are driven by an internal compass that does not waver, and that is when transformation begins, not the kind of transformation that fades after a few weeks, but the kind that rewires who you are at your core. And you must also understand that discipline is not something you are born with. It is something you build. It is a skill crafted through repetition, through small daily choices, through refusing to negotiate with laziness. And too many people think discipline requires dramatic actions, but in truth it thrives in the small things, in waking up when you said you would, in putting in the work when no one claps for you, in saying no to distractions that steal your time, in choosing consistency over comfort. And it is these small victories that compound into greatness, because discipline compounds like interest, and what feels small today becomes massive tomorrow. And the key is to trust the process, even when you cannot see the immediate results, because discipline is not about instant gratification, it is about delayed fulfillment. And though waiting can feel painful, the fruit of discipline is always sweeter than the quick sugar of giving in. And once you taste that fruit, once you experience the pride of knowing you stayed the course, you will crave it more than you ever craved ease, and that craving will fuel your consistency, making you unstoppable. Because when others burn out, you will remain. When others quit, you will persist. When others talk about what they could have done, you will live in what you actually accomplished. And all of it will trace back to one thing: the discipline to keep going when it was easier to stop, the discipline to hold yourself to a higher standard, the discipline to choose your future self over your present comfort. And this is the truth you must hold on to, that discipline is not your enemy, but your ally, not a burden, but a gift, not chains, but wings. And if you embrace it fully, if you let it shape your days and your actions, it will carry you past every limit you thought you had and reveal a version of yourself stronger, sharper, and freer than you ever imagined. Chapter 8: Habits are the invisible architecture of your life, the quiet builders of your destiny, and whether you realize it or not, they are shaping your future every single day. Because every small action you repeat becomes a brick laid in the foundation of who you are becoming. And when those actions are aligned with your goals, with your vision, with your highest values, the foundation grows strong, capable of supporting greatness. But when those actions are careless, distracted, or destructive, the foundation weakens, and over time it cracks. And this is why consistency cannot survive without habits, because motivation is too fleeting to carry you. Discipline needs a framework to function, and habits provide that framework. They are the automatic responses that remove the need for constant decision-making. And when you build strong habits, you eliminate friction, you create momentum, and progress begins to feel natural, like breathing, like walking, like something you simply do rather than something you must constantly fight for. And this is the true secret of transformation, that greatness is not built in grand gestures, but in tiny habits repeated daily, in the ordinary actions that compound into extraordinary outcomes. And yet too many people underestimate the power of habits. They believe only in dramatic breakthroughs, in sudden changes, in overnight success. But success is never overnight. It is hidden in the small choices repeated so consistently that they become automatic. And if you want to break every limit you have, you must begin with your habits. You must examine them closely, because they reveal your trajectory. They are like mirrors showing you the truth of where you are headed. And if you dislike where you are, it is not because destiny has cursed you. It is because your habits have guided you there. And the good news is that habits can be changed. They can be designed. They can be built with intention, but only if you are willing to embrace the process. Because creating new habits requires patience. It requires starting small. It requires repetition, even when the change feels insignificant. And this is where most people fail, not because the habit is impossible, but because they quit too soon. They underestimate the compound effect of small actions. They want immediate results, and when they don't see them, they assume the habit is worthless. But the truth is that habits work in silence. They compound in the background, they accumulate until one day the results are undeniable, and you must trust that process even when the evidence is not yet visible. Because habits are like planting seeds. At first you see nothing, but beneath the soil roots are forming, structures are being built, and only with consistent watering does the growth eventually break through. And if you abandon the habit too early, you abandon the growth just before it was ready to appear. And this is why consistency is the lifeblood of habit building, because repetition cements the pathways in your mind, carving grooves in your brain that make the action automatic. And once it is automatic, resistance fades, effort decreases, and suddenly what once felt difficult becomes effortless. And when your habits align with your vision, your future becomes inevitable, because you no longer rely on willpower alone. You have systems carrying you forward. And systems are stronger than moods, stronger than distractions, stronger than excuses, and the key is to design habits that serve the person you want to become. Because every habit is a vote for your identity. Every time you act, you are reinforcing who you are. And this is why it is dangerous to entertain destructive habits, because they are not harmless, they are not isolated, they are shaping you, carving a version of you that may be smaller, weaker, or further from your true potential. And you must ask yourself with every repeated action, is this taking me closer to the person I want to be or further away? And when the answer is closer, you must nurture that habit with everything you have. And when the answer is further, you must break it before it breaks you, because habits are powerful servants but ruthless masters, and the choice of which they become is yours. And remember also that building habits is not about perfection, it is about persistence. Missing once is human, but missing repeatedly is surrender. And so you must protect your habits fiercely. You must structure your environment to support them, because environment is stronger than willpower. The cues you surround yourself with either trigger good habits or tempt destructive ones. And if you design your environment wisely, you make discipline easier, you make consistency natural, and progress inevitable. And though this requires effort at first, once the habit is established, it begins to carry you. It becomes the silent engine of your growth. And that is the beauty of habits, that they transform extraordinary effort into ordinary routine. And once you reach that point, breaking limits is no longer about monumental struggle. It is about showing up daily in small, deliberate ways. And those small ways add up until you look back and realize you have climbed mountains without noticing. You have crossed distances you once thought impossible, and all of it came down to habits, the quiet builders, the invisible sculptors, the daily votes for the life you desired. And so I tell you this, do not despise small habits, do not ignore them, do not underestimate them, for they are the difference between a life of mediocrity and a life of greatness. And if you will align your habits with your purpose, if you will stay consistent long enough to let them work, then nothing will be able to stop you, not limits, not fear, not doubt, because your very life will be structured for success. Chapter 9. Focus is the sharp edge of consistency, the force that channels your energy into meaningful direction. Because without focus, consistency scatters. It becomes effort wasted on distractions, action diluted by noise, movement without progress. And this is why so many people work hard yet go nowhere, why they hustle every day and still feel stuck, because they are consistent but not focused. And effort without focus is like light without a lens. It shines but it does not burn. But when you harness that light through the lens of focus, it becomes a laser, powerful enough to cut through the hardest obstacles. And the same is true of your life, because if you want your consistency to break every limit you have, you must learn to guard your focus with everything you have. You must learn to say no to what does not matter, to eliminate what does not serve you, to protect your attention from the endless flood of distractions that demand it. Because in the modern world, distraction is not a mistake. It is a weapon. It is designed to steal your time, to fragment your attention, to make you reactive instead of proactive. And if you do not control your focus, someone else will, and they will direct it toward their goals instead of yours. And this is why mastering focus is non-negotiable, because focus is not just about doing more. It is about doing what matters most. It is about knowing your priorities so clearly that everything else becomes noise. And when you combine focus with consistency, you create unstoppable momentum, because you are no longer scattering your efforts across 100 shallow tasks. You are digging deep into the few actions that truly move the needle. And depth always outpaces breadth. Depth builds mastery. Depth compounds results. And mastery and results are what break limits. And you must understand that focus is not a gift some are born with. It is a skill built with discipline, and like any skill, it grows stronger the more you practice it. But practicing focus requires intention. It requires setting boundaries. It requires removing temptations. And most importantly, it requires clarity, because you cannot focus on what you have not defined. So before you chase a goal, you must ask yourself, what truly matters? What will create the greatest impact? What deserves my best energy? And once you know the answer, you must give it everything. You must structure your day around it, protect your time for it, build your habits to support it, and refuse to be distracted by lesser things. And make no mistake, lesser things will always compete for your attention. They will disguise themselves as urgent. They will appeal to your emotions. They will tempt you with immediate gratification. But focus demands sacrifice. It demands that you ignore the trivial to pursue the essential. And at first that sacrifice feels difficult. But over time it becomes liberating, because the fewer things you focus on, the more progress you make. And the more progress you make, the more motivation you feel. And the more motivation you feel, the easier it becomes to stay consistent. And this cycle builds on itself until you reach levels of performance and productivity you once thought impossible. But none of it happens by accident. It happens by design. And designing focus requires building systems to support it. Systems like daily planning, clear goals, defined priorities, and intentional breaks. Because focus is not about working endlessly without rest. It is about working deeply with purpose. And deep work is where breakthroughs happen, where skills sharpen, where creativity thrives. And consistency without deep work is like running on a treadmill. But consistency with focus is like climbing a mountain. Every step brings you higher. Every effort brings you closer. And that climb will test you, because focus is hard. It is hard to resist distractions, hard to say no, hard to silence the noise. But every time you do, you strengthen your will. And willpower is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. And soon focus becomes your default state, a natural way of being. And when you reach that point, the world slows down, the chaos fades, and you begin to see opportunities others miss. You begin to notice patterns others overlook. And you begin to create results others cannot imagine. And this is the power of focus. It turns ordinary effort into extraordinary achievement. It turns scattered potential into unstoppable momentum. It turns consistency into transformation. And so I urge you, stop glorifying business, stop measuring success by how much you do, and start measuring it by how deeply you commit to what matters most. Because 1 hour of focused action is worth more than 10 hours of scattered activity, and the person who learns to focus their consistency will always outperform the one who spreads it thin, always break limits faster, always climb higher. Because focus is the difference between movement and progress, between noise and impact, between potential and power. And once you master it, once you learn to protect it and direct it, your consistency will no longer feel like struggle. It will feel like precision, and that precision will carve a path through every barrier standing in your way. Chapter 10: Patience is the silent partner of consistency. the quiet strength that allows you to endure the long seasons where results seem invisible, because growth does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it hides in the background, slowly building, quietly compounding, until one day the breakthrough arrives, and if you do not have patience, you will abandon the process before the reward appears. And this is why so many people fail, not because they are incapable, not because they are unwilling to work, but because they demand results too quickly. They expect transformation to happen overnight. They crave instant gratification, and when reality does not match their timeline, they quit. But consistency is not about speed. It is about endurance. It is about showing up again and again, trusting that the seeds you planted will eventually grow, even when you cannot yet see the harvest. And this requires patience, because patience is not passive waiting, it is active persistence. It is the choice to keep moving forward when your eyes tell you nothing is changing, when your mind whispers it is pointless, when your heart aches with doubt. And in those moments, patience is what steadies you. Patience reminds you that great things take time, that mastery is forged in repetition, that strength is built one small effort at a time. And if you surrender to impatience, you rob yourself of the reward that was just beyond the next step. Because impatience blinds you. It makes you dig up the seed before it can sprout. It convinces you to abandon the journey just before the destination. And nothing is more tragic than quitting too soon. But patience protects you from this tragedy. It anchors you in the belief that persistence always pays, that consistent effort always compounds, and though the results may not come when you want them, they will come when you need them. And that is the rhythm of growth. Never on your preferred schedule, but always on time, and you must learn to respect that rhythm, to honor the process instead of rushing it, because impatience leads to shortcuts, and shortcuts are illusions. They promise speed but deliver fragility. They give you quick wins but no lasting foundation, and what comes quickly often disappears just as quickly. But what you build patiently, what you earn through consistent effort over time, cannot be taken from you, because it becomes a part of who you are. It becomes ingrained in your character, and character is not built in a day. It is built daily, through small, consistent actions repeated over months and years. And this is why patience is not weakness. Patience is power. It is the ability to endure frustration without quitting, to embrace delay without despair, to trust the unseen even when the seen feels discouraging. And if you can cultivate patience alongside consistency, there will be no limit you cannot break, because most limits exist not in your ability, but in your tolerance for delay, in your willingness to keep going when the reward is not immediate. And the truth is that patience requires faith. Faith in yourself, faith in the process, faith that effort today will create fruit tomorrow. And that faith is tested in the silence, in the waiting, in the long stretches where progress hides. But those who pass the test find themselves standing in fields of abundance, reaping the harvest of seeds they refuse to abandon. And so I tell you this, do not confuse patience with laziness, because laziness does nothing while patience continues. Laziness excuses inaction, while patience embraces action without demand for instant reward. And the difference is everything, because patience builds momentum while laziness destroys it. And your task is to train yourself to love the process more than the outcome, to measure success not by immediate results, but by faithful action. And when you learn this, when you embrace patience fully, you will find peace in the journey. You will stop comparing your timeline to others. You will stop rushing what cannot be rushed, and you will start trusting that every step, every effort, every small act of consistency is moving you forward, even if you cannot yet see how. And in that trust you will discover resilience, because patience strengthens the heart. It teaches you to endure rejection, to outlast disappointment, to keep your fire burning when others burn out. And eventually you will realize that patience is not just about waiting. It is about becoming. It is about who you shape yourself into during the wait. And if you stay faithful long enough, the outcome will not only meet your expectations, it will exceed them, because the process will have made you stronger than the prize itself. And that is the greatest reward of patience, not just what you achieve, but who you become. And when you understand this, you will no longer see delays as obstacles. You will see them as preparation, as training, as sharpening for the greater victories ahead. And with that mindset, you will never again be defeated by impatience, because you will know the truth: consistency without patience collapses, but consistency with patience conquers, and together they will carry you beyond every limit you once thought unbreakable. Chapter 11: Resilience is the armor of consistency, the unshakable spirit that keeps you moving when life throws its hardest punches. Because no journey worth taking is free from struggle, and no path to greatness is smooth. And if you believe you can move forward without resistance, you are deceiving yourself. Because resistance is not an obstacle. It is the very weight that builds your strength. It is the very storm that sharpens your endurance. And resilience is the quality that ensures you do not break under that weight, that you do not drown in that storm. Because resilience is not about avoiding pain. It is about enduring it. Not about pretending setbacks do not hurt, but about refusing to let them define you. And this is where consistency draws its deepest power. Because every time you choose to keep going after a setback, you are practicing resilience. Every time you refuse to quit despite discouragement, you are building resilience. Every time you stand back up after being knocked down, you are proving to yourself that you are unbreakable. And this is the essence of resilience: not perfection, not invincibility, but persistence. The relentless decision to continue when everything around you tells you to stop. And the truth is that life will test you in ways you cannot predict. You will face disappointments you did not expect, losses you did not want, delays you did not choose. But resilience transforms these experiences from endings into chapters, from wounds into wisdom, from obstacles into opportunities. And though the pain may not vanish, your ability to endure it without losing direction becomes your greatest strength. And when combined with consistency, resilience becomes unstoppable. Because consistency gives you the structure to move forward daily, and resilience gives you the heart to continue when those days feel unbearable. And together they break limits no amount of talent alone could break. And you must understand that resilience is not built in comfort. It is forged in difficulty. It is shaped in adversity. It is carved into you when you are stretched, challenged, and pressed. And though in the moment it feels unbearable, years later you will look back and realize that the very moments that threatened to break you were the ones that built you. Because resilience is never built when things are easy. It is always built when things are hard. And this is why you must not run from challenges, because challenges are the training ground for your strength, the gym where your mental and emotional muscles are forged. And just as a bodybuilder grows not by lifting light weights, but by struggling against heavy ones, you grow by struggling against hardship. And when you realize this, you stop resenting the struggle and you start respecting it, because you know it is making you stronger. And this shift in perspective is everything, because most people see challenges as proof they should quit, but resilient people see challenges as proof they are on the right path, that growth is happening, that transformation is underway. And this is why resilience is inseparable from consistency, because resilience allows you to stay consistent even when progress is invisible, even when hope feels thin, even when fatigue weighs heavy. And this ability to continue is what separates those who merely dream from those who achieve. Because the dreamers quit when it gets too hard, but the achievers persist, and every act of persistence strengthens their resilience, creating a cycle of growth that compounds over time. And soon they are no longer intimidated by setbacks. They are fueled by them, because they know that every setback overcome is another layer of armor added, another proof of their unshakable spirit. And this armor does not make life painless, but it makes you stronger than the pain. And that strength is what allows you to break every limit. Because limits are not just physical barriers, they are emotional walls, they are mental ceilings, and resilience is the hammer that smashes them, the fire that melts them, the power that transforms them into stepping stones. And if you want to live without limits, you must train your resilience daily, not by avoiding hardship, but by embracing it, by reminding yourself in the darkest nights that the dawn always comes, by refusing to let temporary suffering convince you of permanent defeat. And the more you practice this, the more natural it becomes, until resilience is not something you have to force, but something you embody, something woven into your character. And at that point, nothing external can break you, because your strength comes from within. And when strength comes from within, you are untouchable, unstoppable, unshakable. And this is the truth you must hold. Resilience is not about avoiding the fall. It is about always rising after it. Not about never breaking, but about always rebuilding stronger. Not about escaping storms, but about learning to dance in the rain. And once you master this, no limit, no barrier, no setback will ever be able to hold you down again. Chapter 12. Discipline is the invisible bridge that carries consistency from intention to reality. The force that transforms what you say you want into what you actually do, because it is easy to talk about dreams, easy to imagine success, easy to visualize a better life. But without discipline, none of it manifests. And discipline is not glamorous, it does not sparkle, it does not entertain, it demands sacrifice. It asks you to rise when you want to sleep, to work when you want to rest, to stay focused when distraction whispers in your ear. And though this seems heavy, it is in fact liberating, because discipline is the art of choosing what you want most over what you want now, the ability to prioritize long-term growth over temporary comfort. And when you embrace it, you free yourself from the chains of impulse, from the prison of inconsistency, and from the chaos of procrastination, because without discipline, consistency collapses. It remains a fragile idea rather than a daily reality. But with discipline, consistency becomes second nature, a rhythm woven into your life so deeply that missing it feels unnatural. And discipline is built not through giant leaps, but through daily choices, small decisions repeated until they form habits, and habits eventually shape identity. And once discipline is a part of who you are, you no longer fight with yourself every morning about whether to act. You simply act, because discipline has reprogrammed your mind and body to move toward your purpose regardless of your emotions. And this is important because emotions are fleeting, they rise and fall with circumstances, they can be unreliable guides, but discipline is steady. Discipline does not care if you feel tired, discipline does not care if you feel unmotivated. Discipline only asks, did you do what needed to be done? And when you can answer yes to that question day after day, you build a level of trust in yourself that no external validation can match. Because the deepest confidence comes not from compliments, but from the knowledge that you keep your own word, that you follow through, that you are dependable to yourself. And this confidence is unshakable, because it is rooted in evidence, the evidence of daily discipline. And this is why discipline is often misunderstood as restriction, when in reality it is empowerment. Because the person without discipline is enslaved by impulses, tossed around by moods, chained to the cycle of starting and quitting, while the disciplined person is free to choose their direction, free to sustain progress, free to break limits. And when you understand this, you stop resisting discipline and start craving it, because you see that every act of discipline is an investment. Every act of discipline is a brick laid in the foundation of your dreams. Every act of discipline brings you closer to the life you want. And though in the moment it feels like a sacrifice, in reality it is an exchange, a temporary discomfort traded for permanent growth. And this trade always pays, because what you gain from discipline always outweighs what you give up. And the proof of this is everywhere, in athletes who train while others rest, in writers who put words down daily while others only wait for inspiration, in entrepreneurs who show up for their business even when no one is watching. And what all these people have in common is not luck, not privilege, not even talent, but discipline. And it is discipline that makes them unstoppable, because while others burn out, they remain steady. While others quit, they continue. While others drift aimlessly, they move forward with purpose. And if you want to break every limit you have, you must master discipline, not occasionally, not when it feels convenient, but daily, relentlessly, until it becomes inseparable from your identity. And once it is, you will find that limits which once seemed immovable begin to crumble, not because they vanished, but because you became stronger, more focused, more committed, and discipline gave you the endurance to keep pressing until they broke. And this truth should light a fire in you, because it means you already have the power to transform your life. The question is not whether you are capable, but whether you are willing to pay the price of discipline, whether you are willing to embrace the temporary discomfort that leads to permanent freedom. And if the answer is yes, then no force can stop you, because discipline will carry you where motivation cannot. Discipline will sustain you where excitement fades. Discipline will guide you when distractions attack. And in the end, discipline will prove to you that consistency is not just something you practice, it is something you become. And when you become it, no limit will ever stand in your way again. Chapter 13 Focus is the lens that sharpens the power of consistency, the discipline of directing your energy toward what truly matters rather than scattering it across distractions, because consistency without focus is like pouring water into a basket. The effort is real, but the result is lost. And in a world overflowing with noise, where notifications, temptations, and endless options fight for your attention, focus has become one of the rarest and most valuable skills, and those who master it rise above the chaos because they are no longer controlled by distractions. They are guided by intention, and this is the truth you must grasp. You cannot be consistent in everything. You cannot chase every path. You cannot say yes to every opportunity, because every yes is also a no to something else. And without clarity of focus, you will waste your consistency on things that do not align with your vision. And then you will feel exhausted but empty, busy but unfulfilled, active but ineffective, because effort without direction is wasted motion. And this is why focus must always precede consistency, because once you know what truly matters, once you know what you want most, once you have identified the limits you intend to break, then your consistency gains power. It stops being a scatter of arrows and becomes a single spear driving forward with unstoppable force. And the beauty of focus is that it simplifies life. It clears the fog, it silences the noise, it tells you what deserves your yes and what requires your no. And this clarity is liberating, because most people are not defeated by lack of talent or lack of effort, but by lack of focus. They dilute themselves across too many pursuits. They divide their energy until nothing receives enough to grow. But when you focus, when you commit yourself fully to a few meaningful pursuits, your consistency compounds and breakthroughs happen. Because the truth is, you cannot chase 10 rabbits and catch one. But if you chase one rabbit with full attention, you will succeed. And this principle applies to every area of life, to health, to business, to relationships, to growth, because focus multiplies results. It takes the same hours you already have, but directs them in a way that actually creates transformation. And to master focus, you must first silence distractions, because distractions are thieves. They steal your time, your energy, your life, and every moment spent on something meaningless is a moment stolen from your purpose. And though the world will always tempt you with shiny distractions, you must train yourself to choose depth over noise, purpose over impulse, vision over comfort. And this requires boundaries, the courage to say no, the wisdom to withdraw from what drains you, the strength to resist the pull of instant gratification. And though saying no is uncomfortable, every no to distraction is a yes to your dream. Every no to impulse is a yes to growth. Every no to meaningless activity is a yes to breaking your limits. And when you live with this awareness, focus becomes your ally, your shield, your compass, and consistency becomes the steady force that follows it, and together they create unstoppable progress, because the person who is both focused and consistent is invincible. They may not be the fastest. They may not be the most talented, but they are clear and they are steady, and that combination destroys limits, because clarity keeps you on the right path while consistency keeps you moving forward. And eventually, step by step, day by day, you arrive where others only dream, and here lies a deeper truth. Focus is not only about eliminating distractions, but also about directing your energy inward, because too often we focus outward, comparing ourselves to others, measuring ourselves against timelines that are not ours, chasing goals that do not belong to us. But when you focus inward, when you align with your true purpose, your consistency becomes effortless, because it no longer feels like punishment. It feels like alignment, like every action you take is in harmony with your vision, and this alignment creates flow. It creates joy in the process, and when joy joins consistency, limits fall faster, because now you are not only disciplined, you are inspired, not only committed, you are passionate, and passion sustains you when discipline feels heavy. It fuels you when the journey is long. It keeps you alive when fatigue threatens to consume you. And so the secret is not just to focus, but to focus rightly, to focus on what matters most, to focus on what you truly desire, rather than what the world pressures you to chase. And when you do, when your focus sharpens and your consistency supports it, you become unstoppable, because nothing wastes your energy, nothing diverts your path, nothing distracts your spirit, and everything you do moves you closer to breaking every limit that once held you back. Chapter 14, Adaptability, Flexibility, that allows consistency to survive change, the ability to bend without breaking, to adjust without abandoning, because life is not static, circumstances shift, seasons change, unexpected challenges arise, and if you cling rigidly to a plan without the wisdom to adapt, you will eventually break under the weight of what you cannot control. But if you cultivate adaptability, your consistency remains unshaken, because consistency is not about doing the same thing forever in the same way. It is about honoring the same commitment in whatever way reality requires. And this distinction matters, because too many people confuse consistency with stubbornness. They believe that to be consistent, they must never alter their approach, never rethink their path, never adjust their strategy, and as a result they exhaust themselves in methods that no longer work. But true consistency is not blind repetition. It is intelligent persistence. It is the art of remaining faithful to the goal while being flexible with the method, and adaptability is the skill that makes this possible, because it allows you to see when change is necessary, when redirection is wise, when innovation is required, and instead of seeing change as failure, you see it as evolution, as growth, as refinement. And this mindset is what separates those who last from those who fade, because the world is constantly shifting, and only those willing to adjust survive, and history proves this truth. Companies that once dominated fell because they resisted change. Leaders who once inspired lost influence because they refused to evolve. But those who embraced adaptability not only endured but thrived, because adaptability is not compromise, it is strategy. It is the wisdom to know that the mountain can be climbed from many sides. And if one path collapses, you do not abandon the climb. You simply find another way up. And this is where adaptability and consistency become allies rather than opposites. Because adaptability keeps your consistency alive, it prevents stagnation. It keeps you moving when obstacles block the original road. And the key to mastering adaptability is humility. The humility to admit when something is not working. The humility to learn new ways. The humility to release old habits that no longer serve you. And humility is strength, not weakness, because it allows growth. And growth requires change, and change requires adaptability. And when you combine adaptability with consistency, you become like water, steady yet flexible, soft yet unstoppable, shaping yourself to every container yet carving through stone over time. And this is why the most resilient people are not the most rigid, they are the most adaptable, because they do not waste energy fighting change. They use it. They do not resist the tide, they ride it. They do not cling to the past. They embrace the future. And by doing so, they preserve their consistency in a world that constantly tries to disrupt it. And in your own journey, you must remember this truth. Your goal is sacred, but your method is not. Your vision is fixed, but your strategy is flexible. Your destination remains, but your path may twist. And when you live with this awareness, you stop fearing change. You start flowing with it, and every change becomes another opportunity to refine your consistency, to deepen your commitment, to strengthen your resilience, because every adjustment you make is proof that you value the goal enough to do whatever it takes to reach it. And this proof builds confidence, it builds creativity, it builds courage, and courage is necessary because adaptability often requires stepping into the unknown, leaving behind what is familiar, risking discomfort in the pursuit of something greater. But when you trust yourself, when you trust your consistency, you realize that no matter what changes, you will not be lost, because your commitment anchors you, and with that anchor you can face uncertainty without fear, because you know you will keep moving forward. And eventually, forward is all that matters, because forward breaks limits, forward destroys stagnation, forward fulfills destiny, and adaptability ensures that no matter how the path changes, you will always move forward. And this is the gift of adaptability, not the removal of challenge, but the guarantee that challenge cannot stop you, because you will always find another way. And when you live with this gift, you will discover that nothing in life is truly permanent except your own commitment. And as long as that remains, every change becomes an ally, every shift becomes a teacher, every challenge becomes another chance to prove that consistency guided by adaptability can break every limit you face. Chapter 15: Victory is not a moment, it is a lifestyle. It is not a single finish line you cross once, but a way of living that grows out of consistent choices, daily commitments, and unshakable persistence. Because when you reach what you once thought was your limit, you realize that the end is not truly the end. It is a new beginning, another level, another challenge, another horizon waiting to be conquered. And this realization is the ultimate proof that consistency really does break every limit you have, because every time you stretch beyond what you believed was possible, your vision expands, your confidence deepens, your identity strengthens, and you step into a greater version of yourself. And the beauty of victory born from consistency is that it is not fragile, it is not temporary, it cannot be taken away by circumstance, because it was not handed to you, it was built brick by brick, day by day, with sweat, with sacrifice, with resilience, with discipline, and because of that, it belongs to you in a way nothing else can. And the world may celebrate your visible success, but the deeper victory is invisible. It is who you became through the process. It is the strength, patience, courage, and clarity that now define you, and these cannot be lost. They cannot be stolen. They cannot be shaken, because they are part of your character, and character is forever. And this is why consistency is more than a tool. It is a way of life, because once you have trained yourself to show up, to endure, to adapt, to focus, to remain patient, then no challenge feels impossible anymore. No dream feels unreachable, no limit feels permanent, and victory becomes inevitable, because consistency does not rely on luck. It creates certainty. It guarantees growth. It ensures progress, and progress is the seed of victory. And the more you progress, the more victories you accumulate, not only in external achievements, but in internal breakthroughs, victories like overcoming self-doubt, defeating fear, silencing excuses, conquering procrastination, victories like staying calm in storms, staying hopeful in despair, staying committed when others quit. And though the world may never applaud these victories, they are the most powerful ones, because they prove to you that you are unstoppable, that you can trust yourself, that you are no longer at war with your own limits, but capable of shattering them. And this inner transformation is the essence of true victory. And once you experience it, you realize that winning is not about proving yourself to others. It is about proving to yourself that you can rise, that you can endure, that you can overcome, and from this place of inner victory, the outer victories, career, relationships, health, goals, become ineligible by polats, lock the core, because you are now built on a foundation too strong to crumble. And here is the truth. Victory without consistency is hollow. It fades quickly, it slips away as fast as it came. But victory earned through consistency lasts, it echoes, it multiplies, it inspires, because others see not just what you achieved, but how you achieved it. And they are reminded that they too can rise, that they too can endure, that they too can break their limits. And this ripple effect is perhaps the greatest victory of all, because your consistent life becomes a beacon, a light that encourages others, a testimony that whispers to them that impossible is only temporary, that limits are only illusions, and that consistency is the key that unlocks every locked door. And if you take nothing else from this journey, take this: victory is not out there waiting. Victory is built within you through every small act of consistency, and every day you show up, you are already winning. Every time you choose discipline over distraction, you are already winning. Every time you choose resilience over surrender, you are already winning. And the accumulation of these small wins creates great victories, victories beyond anything you imagined. And when you look back, you will not just see the goals you achieved. You will see the person you became, a person no longer confined by limits, a person who learned that consistency is not about perfection but persistence, not about speed but direction, not about never falling but always rising. And in that rising lies the ultimate victory, because life will never stop testing you, challenges will never vanish, storms will never cease. But when you live with consistency, every storm becomes a chance to prove your strength, every challenge becomes an invitation to grow, every setback becomes a setup for a comeback. And in this mindset, victory is no longer rare, it is constant, because victory is no longer something you chase, it is something you embody. And when you embody victory through consistency, every limit falls, every barrier breaks, and every dream becomes possible, because you now understand the ultimate truth: consistency is victory, and if you live by it, you will never be defeated again.